Hello, and welcome to the Sharlayan Forum. My name is Chris, and with the recent announcement that the 24-man raid series for the upcoming Final Fantasy XIV expansion Dawntrail would be themed around the other Final Fantasy MMO, Final Fantasy XI, I thought that a story recap for the game would be a huge help for those in need in the community who may have never played 11, or, like myself, played it a really long time ago and never paid attention because you were like 12 years old. In this video, I'm going to focus on the base game of Final Fantasy XI, as well as the first two expansion packs, the Rize of Zilart and the Chains of Promathia. I would consider these three storylines to be sort of the main lore of Final Fantasy XI, and the other expansions, as well as the various add-on scenarios, do more to explain very specific events, or in some cases completely alternate reality timelines. I also feel like these three storylines lend themselves the best to the adaptation of Final Fantasy XIV, so I'll do a brief explanation of how I think that these stories could be used at the very end of this video. Feel free to let me know if you'd like for me to cover the other content, and maybe I'll make another video talking about the lore of the other expansions. Before I get started, I also want to give a huge shout out to KORVANA over on YouTube. KORVANA is a historian of sorts for Final Fantasy XI and has dedicated years to recording almost every single cutscene in the game, a collection that they call Final Fantasy XI the Movie. I reached out and got permission to use their footage as the backing to this video, so it wouldn't have been possible without them. With that said, let's jump into the history of Final Fantasy XI and the world of Vana'diel. The story of Final Fantasy XI is set in the 884th year of the Crystal Era, also known as the Age of Adventurers. 20 years ago, a massive war known as the Crystal War ravaged Vana'diel. The three main nation-states of Vana'diel, the Kingdom of Sandoria, the Republic of Bastok, and the Federation of Windurst continue their struggle against the Beastmen hordes. Since the end of the Crystal War, however, the Beastmen have been less organized, but recently they have regrouped and they still terrorize their land. Rather than sacrificing their defensive capabilities, the nations decide to employ adventurers to handle the external Beastmen threat, as well as other minor tasks. You play as one such adventurer. You begin by leveling up and completing some random tasks for your chosen starting nation until you have enough fame and credibility to be trusted with one of the more important missions. With reports of Beastmen activity rising, the adventurer journeys to the other two nations on behalf of their own as an emissary to check into their Beastmen problems. In one of the Beastmen strongholds, the adventurer comes face to face with the Searcher, an Ahriman monster who is the servant of the Shadow Lord, a powerful threat who led the Beastmen in the Crystal War. The Searcher summons a dark dragon, forcing the adventurer to contend with the beast while it proclaims that the Shadow Lord will rise once again. He then dies. Here the player talks more with Lion, a young woman who had been deployed to investigate the Beastmen threat. A few missions later, the adventurer is made to report to the Grand Duchy of Juno, a central state located centrally between the three main nations. Here they investigate and rescue an ambassador who had been kidnapped and held hostage by the Gygus Beastmen in Delgfut's tower. The ambassador, impressed by your bravery, recommends you as an attaché to the Archduke of Juno for a special mission. Camlanot, the Archduke of Juno, tasks the adventurer with retrieving powerful stones known as magicite from deep within the Beastmen stronghold, the Orcish fortress of Devoy, the Quadav burrows of Bedo, and the religious center of the Yagudo, Kashalaz Troya. During this mission, the adventurer also meets Aldo, the leader of a mysterious organization known as the Tenshodo, and his sister Verena, as well as her goblin companion, Ficblix. With the three pieces of magicite in hand, the adventurer returns to the Archduke. Upon returning to their home nation, however, the adventurer learns that a very important artifact used to seal the entrance to Castle Zval, the home of the Shadow Lord, has been stolen. You are sent to Fei Yin to examine the seal placed there and reseal it if it has somehow managed to be broken. In Fei Yin, the adventurer meets back up with Lion and is introduced to Zeed, one of the two legendary warriors who defeated the Shadow Lord during the Crystal War 20 years ago. Zeed shares the details of the Northland expedition that took place 30 years ago. He then recites Warrior of the Crystal, a song that tells the story of warriors delivering Vana'diel from an age of darkness once an ancient seal has been broken. The adventurer travels deeper into Fei Yin, encountering a powerful undead lich, who is found holding the burnt remains of the old seal that had once been placed there. Upon returning to their home nation with news about the burnt seal, the decision is made to send the adventurer to Castle Zval to deal with the threat of the returning Shadow Lord. In the throne room of Zval, Zeed and the other adventurer encounter the Shadow Lord, who they find out is actually Raugrim, a Galkan member of the Northland expedition Zeed told us about earlier. Raugrim had been betrayed and left for dead by his fellow members of the expedition, who also killed Raugrim's lover, Cornelia, in their confrontation. It is revealed that in his final moments, Raugrim was filled with so much rage that he attracted the power of the dark divinity, Odin, the being which gave the original Shadow Lord his power. Odin gave Raugrim a new form and control over the beasts of darkness, reincarnating him as the new Shadow Lord. He swore to purge the world with his newfound power, starting with Ulrich, the member of the expedition who had left him for dead, so he tracked him down and brutally murdered him as well as the other members. The new Shadow Lord forces Zed to stand and watch helplessly as he attacks us, but somehow we manage to overcome him. As he lies defeated, Raugrim manages to regain control of himself and explains that much of the rage that consumed him kept him from becoming who he was meant to be. Raugrim was what is known as a Talekeeper, meaning that he alone among the Gulka retains the emotions and memories of their entire race, an unquestionably important but very tragic role. He states that he will instead be forever lost to darkness. Lion appears to help Zed and the adventurer escape, and tells us to visit her sometime at her home in Norg. We return to our home nation and are celebrated as heroes. The adventurer arrives in Norg, greeted by Lion, who's happy that we've come to visit her like she asked. However, it's discovered that we don't remember what she's talking about when she refers to extra events in the throne room. She attributes this to extreme shock, which eventually triggers us to have a flashback of the events, revealing new parts of the memory that we had suppressed completely. We learn that after Raugrim revealed himself to be the Shadow Lord, the Archduke of Juno, Camlanot, and his brother Eldnarsh appeared, telling us that they are actually known as Zilart, a race of humans that was supposedly destroyed thousands of years ago. The brothers reveal that their master plan was to open what's called the Gate of the Gods, a portal that would lead them to a place called Paradise, the land of the gods. However, the Shadow Lord had been causing too much quote-unquote noise in the magical plane, blocking the power that flowed from deep within Vana'diel itself. However, now that we had defeated the reborn Shadow Lord, the Zilart brothers could put their devious plans into motion. The Zilart princes then summon the fabled warriors of the crystal, known here as the Archangels, who attack everyone present in the room. Zed has attempted to fight, but his attacks proved useless, and we were quickly defeated by the warriors. Raugrim channels the remaining power he holds to become the Shadow Lord once more in a desperate attempt to take the Archangels out and give us time to escape, sacrificing himself. As the flashback ends, Lion introduces us to her father, Gilgamesh, who is the leader of Norg. He sends us to a place called the Temple of Ugalepi? I don't know. Where he once met with a strange old woman who he thinks might be able to help us. Aldo appears in Norg as well, and tells us that his sister, Verena, has gone missing, and he suspects it has some sort of connection to the Archduke's plans, but for now, he doesn't really know how. We receive a key to enter the deepest reaches of the temple from a chieftain in a small village called Kazam. Upon reaching this inner sanctum, the adventurer is attacked by a group of Tonberries, before their leader reveals herself to be a woman named Graviton, the old woman that Gilgamesh had met, and a scholar of the lost civilization known as the Kulu. She explains that 10,000 years ago, the Zilart had devised a plan to bring the power of the 5 giant crystals beneath Vana'diel together to power the Gate of the Gods and open the way to paradise. They would use Delkfutt's Tower, the 5 crags that dot Vana'diel's surface, as well as the crystal lines that connect them all, to harness and control the 5 crystals and power the floating island of Tulia, which would serve as the Gate of the Gods. However, the Kulu and the Dawn Maidens, followers of the goddess, opposed this plan and attacked the Northern Ark, sabotaging the Zilart plans and causing a massive explosion. This absolutely destroyed the Zilart civilization, sinking their capital into the sea and turning the northern lands of Vana'diel into a barren, frozen wasteland. The energy left over affected the Kulu greatly, and eventually they deteriorated into the Tonberries. Graviton then implores the adventurer to gather 8 fragments of light, which she says can be found in Sermet headstones scattered around Vana'diel, and bring them to an ancient temple on the island of Zepwell. There, the Dawn Maiden should be able to guide our path. After gathering the fragments and entering what's called the Chamber of Oracles, we face off with some guardians and defeat them. Following the fight, the Dawn Maidens explain that the 5 Archangels, as well as the 5 races of Vana'diel themselves, were born from the 5 crystals buried below Vana'diel. They explain that the eldest Zilart prince had made a connection of some sorts with the crystal, and it was from this connection that he saw a vision of the Zilart reopening the Gate of the Gods. She urges us to make haste to Delkfutt's Tower in order to stop their plot. Back in Juno, Lion informs Aldo that she saw a bunch of ducal guards taking Verena towards Delkfutt's Tower. Together with Zeed, the three of them accompany the adventurer to Delkvut's tower and confront the Zilart. There, they encounter the Archduke, who tells them that the tower is essentially a control station used to open the path to Tulia. He explains that it has been slumbering for 10,000 years waiting for this exact moment. We challenge him and defeat him in battle. Lying on the ground, crumpled and defeated, he wonders why the Crystal Warriors didn't help him fight us, and neither did his brother, who explains that the crystal has forsaken him. He tells him that he has discovered a new way to open the Gate of the Gods, and allows his brother to die, revealing himself to be the elder of the two Zilart, whose growth was somehow halted when he came into contact with the crystal, granting him the vision of this very moment. He then brings out Verina, as well as the head of the Shadow Lord, claiming that she and he are the true keys to the tower's core. Verina's soul has a special ability to resonate with and understand beastmen, as made evident by her goblin companion, which he uses to tap into Ralgrim's innate power and reactivates the tower's core. With Tulia activated, Eldnarsh invites the adventurer to see paradise with their own eyes, and we can do this by simply proving our worth in some place called Romave. Lion returns to Norg and asks for help from Gilgamesh, who explains that Romave is located just beyond the sanctuary of Zita. We are sent to Romave to discover the Hall of the Gods. Using a crystal that we obtained from an old adventurer, we open the gate and step through the portal, arriving at Tulia. Here, the adventurer challenges and defeats all 5 archangels, then advancing to the core of Tulia, known as the Celestial Nexus. Here we find Eldnarsh, who attacks us after we decline his final offer for salvation. After being defeated, he refuses to submit and attempts to restart the crystal line before it is complete, causing a meltdown very similar to the one that wiped out his own race 10,000 years ago. Watching on helplessly, the adventurer and his party admit that they may not make it out of this, when Lion makes the decision to sacrifice herself to save the others, throwing herself into the crystal's core. As the power of the crystal fades, Eldnarsh realizes his plan has been foiled, and the Dawn Maidens appear before him and beckon him back to the crystal, ending his 10,000-year plan. With Lion gone, Aldo, Zeed, and the adventurer leave Tulia, returning to Norg. Gilgamesh mourns the loss of his daughter, who he reveals to have been adopted during the Great Crystal War, but states that he is proud of her and proud to be her father. At the Tenshoto headquarters in Juneau, Verina and Aldo have a conversation where she states that she can still feel Lion is alive somewhere, although severely weakened, and encourages the adventurer to believe in her. Okay, now before I get into Chains of Promathia, I just need to talk about it for a minute. COP is, for all intents and purposes, to me at least, the actual story of Final Fantasy XI. It's a super long expansion with some of the craziest storylines and most ridiculous fights in the game's history. It's really complicated and there's a lot of characters, so I'm gonna do my best, but this section of the video is gonna be basically the whole thing, so, strap in. On Quiffum Island, scientists from Juneau are baffled when the crystal lines in Delkvut's tower suddenly reverse their energy flow. Suddenly, a massive explosion occurs, killing seemingly all of the scientists. The Ducal Guard rush to the explosion site, surprised to find a young boy who somehow managed to survive this massive explosion, and take him to the infirmary in Juneau. Monbro, the physician there, finds that the young boy is somehow completely unharmed from this massive explosion. We visit the infirmary, and as we do, the young boy suddenly wakes up and gives us a mysterious amulet. The Ducal Guard arrives and attempts to bring the boy in for questioning, but he has somehow mysteriously vanished. In a shot far to the north of the tower, the ruler of the skies, Bahamut, emerges from the sea. He ushers a warning, stating that the children of Vana'diel should be fearful, for the Keeper of the Apocalypse is near, and is commanding his minions to spill the blood of the gods. The adventurer is dispatched to investigate shattered telepoint crystals at the large crags of Hala, Mia, and Dim. As we examine them, we are drawn into a mysterious darkened realm known as Promivian. After investigating the spires within Promivian and slaying the monsters known as the Empty at their apexes, the adventurer arrives at a giant crystal, known as the Mother Crystal. The ambassador of Juneau, Nagmalata, arrives and attempts to kill us to prevent us from harming the crystal, where the mysterious boy appears again and stops him, and blocks the pursuers with a shroud of darkness. When the adventurer reaches the Mother Crystal in their final crag, Nagmalata claims the mysterious boy has released the Emptiness, an unstoppable destructive force of darkness, on the crystal. Following the defeat of the final Empty at the Mother Crystal, Nagmalata and the adventurer are teleported to a mysterious land, which they come to realize is actually the Tavnasian archipelago, a chain of islands to the west of the main landmass of Vana'diel. While we recover from our ordeal, a trio of Tarutaru known as the Chibuki siblings steal the amulet that was gifted to us, thinking it belongs to Prish, the leader of Tavnasia. Arriving in Tavnasia, an elder explains that he and the other survivors there were led to safety by a religious leader named Maldarion during the Crystal War. The survivors have since lived in isolation because the land bridge connecting Tavnasia to the main landmass of Vana'diel had since been destroyed. Nagmalata offers his and the adventurers' aid in slaying a nearby minotaur to gain the Tavnasians' trust. Prish then returns with her friend Olmia after patrolling the area and informs the townfolk that fierce dragons and terrible monsters have appeared in a nearby area known as the Cape Revern. Prish intends to confront the massive dragon she saw earlier, who she suspects to be Bahamut, in Cape Revern for answers, and finds out that Nagmalata and the Chibuki triplets have already headed for the area. Prish, Olmia, and the adventurer arrive at Cape Revern to find that it has been distorted in space-time, opening a path to a secret area of the Cape known as Monarch Lyn. There, Nagmalata sings a song called Memoria de la Stono to Bahamut, proving to the Elder Dragon that he is a member of the ancient Kulu race that stood opposed to the Zilart 10,000 years ago. Because of this, Bahamut states that he will honor a pact he made with the Kulu all that time ago, and flies away. An airship of mysterious Juno scientists then appears, hitting Bahamut with a magical web and sicking 3 powerful mammoths to defend their binding magics on him. The adventurer defeats the mammoths and frees Bahamut, who in his rage teleports Prish, Olmia, the Chibukis, and the adventurer away. Meanwhile, in Delkfut's tower, Nagmalata meets with a mysterious woman from earlier. She is revealed to be named Esha-Antarl, a Zilart and a member of the secretive society, the Armathron Society, that investigates the emptiness. She chastises him for approaching Bahamut alone and allowing the mysterious boy from earlier to escape his clutches. Prish and the adventurer awaken on the shores of Gustaberg, outside of Bastok. They head back to Juno to find an old friend of Prish's who is a member of the Tenshoto. Her friend, it is revealed, is actually Aldo's father, Grezzo, who is unfortunately long dead. However, Aldo agrees to help Prish get back to Tavnasia as he recently received a request to travel there anyway, allowing her to ride along. The adventurer, instead, is wanted for treason in Juno, and decides to turn themselves in to an attempt to prove their innocence. It is revealed that Esha-Antarl, the female scientist from earlier, is the current acting Duchess of Juno. Also at this meeting is Tenzin, an adventurer from the Far East, who states that the emptiness is rapidly consuming his home, signaling the return of the Keeper of the Apocalypse. The Duchess suspects that the mysterious boy who has been present in many cutscenes at this point is in fact the Keeper, and tasks us with capturing him to prove our innocence. Tenzin and the adventurer attempt to locate the boy in the ruins of Soja, but stumble upon the innermost chamber, where they are surprised to find Prish unconscious in the ground. Here they are attacked by the avatar Diablos. Discovering that he has actually drawn them into his dream world, the mysterious boy appears once again and rescues Prish from her dream. Tenzin reveals that his katana contains the spirit of the avatar Phoenix, and implores Diablo to help them defeat the emptiness before it consumes their world. Diablos instead claims that there's basically nothing he can do, and says that stopping the emptiness is a worthless effort, but he does offer the dream world of Dynamis as an eternal escape from reality. Prish awakens in Juno, where Tenzin explains that Diablos and Phoenix are 2 of the 5 terrestrial avatars born to protect Vana'diel from the emptiness. It is then revealed that Tenzin is the one who hired Aldo to take him to Tavnasia, and he invites us to join him on his journey back to the islands. Upon arriving in Tavnasia, Tenzin rushes to get to Bahamut before anyone else can. At Monarch Lyn, Bahamut mocks Tenzin's request for aid and sends Oryu to attack us. The adventurer helps Tenzin fight off the dragon, while Bahamut claims their attempts to stop the emptiness are meaningless. He forces Phoenix to sing the 3rd verse of Memoria de la Stono from within Tenzin's katana, and is impressed when the party recognizes the tune. He reveals that a child who knew the 4th verse made a pact with him to destroy all of mankind when the Keeper of the Apocalypse reappears 10,000 years ago. The party then learns that the emptiness is the result of the twilight god Promathia, who is said to have cursed mankind for their attempts to reach paradise, the land of the gods. Nagmalata blames Tenzin for ruining their plan to contain Bahamut and sends the adventurer to Castle Sval to the 4th Mother Crystal. Prish reveals that she actually had an accident as a child which stopped her from aging, and asks Olmia and Tenzin to help her find the boy and learn more about the emptiness. She suggests that they could ask Promathia directly using a statue of him and holding below Tavnasia, She holds out her hands to the statue and hears the voice of Promathia, who asks, strangely, for his own resurrection and his own death. The Tavnasian townfolk blame Prish for their misfortune when they learn that she communed with Promathia. The party then departs on an airship bound for Sandoria. The airship arrives in Bastok instead of Sandoria, and it's revealed that we were actually whisked away by Cid. The party heads back to Zojah and arrives at the Vasil Mother Crystal. Here they run into Nagmalata and the mysterious boy again, where Nagmalata reveals that the vessel that they have been using to carry artifacts and the one that stopped Prish from aging is actually something known as the Eye of Altana, an artifact used to turn emptiness into magicite, and that the amulet given to us by the boy was once used by the Kulu and the Zilart to contain the emptiness from within themselves. They could use this contained power to peer into people's hearts, an ability that they once had natively but had lost their ability to communicate with each other because of. The mysterious boy is finally revealed to be Celtius, a Kulu who was the only survivor of a place called Altayu when it was destroyed thousands of years ago. When Celtius is subdued by Nagmalata, he communicates directly with Prish's mind, telling her the lyrics of the 4th verse of the Memoria della Stono, which resonates with the Mother Crystal present and allows Celtius to escape and touch the Mother Crystal, therefore causing the emptiness to spread to it. The adventure awakens in Promethean alone. They rescue Tenzin, Oldmia, and some others from the emptiness before arriving at the Spire of Vasil. They find Nagmalata and join him in trying to escape. Here, Diablos appears and explains that Celtius is actually on a mission to defend Altayu, the celestial capital, which was in fact not destroyed, but has been hidden away behind the 5th Mother Crystal. He explains that all souls are slaves to the will of Promathia, citing this as Bahamut's reason for wanting to destroy all mankind as a kindness. Prish resolves to kill the Keeper of the Apocalypse, therefore breaking Bahamut's pact to do so. Working under the assumption that Celtius is the Keeper of the Apocalypse, the party searches for more information, discovering that the way to Altayu only opens once every 100 years. Tenzin learns that Juno is mobilizing a ducal guard for a preemptive attack on Bahamut, and that Esha-Antal possesses the other amulet and beckons Celtius to fulfill his part of the pact. Celtius then reaches the crystal terminal in Dulkfut's tower and connects all 5 mother crystals using the crystal lines and begins draining light from all of them, spreading the emptiness to each and every single one of them. The memory of the terminal reveals that Esha-Antal was once a Kulu like Nagmalata, but had the emptiness inside of her removed, therefore making her a Zilart. Phoenix then asked Tenzin to consult with Fenrir, another of the terrestrial avatars, who shows a vision of 1,000 years in the past. In it, Esha-Antal claims that she would continue Celtius' plan to defeat the Keeper of the Apocalypse, and requests that Fenrir divine when and where the Keeper would appear. He then tells her that the Keeper would rise 1,000 years from that day in Tavnasia. Elsewhere, Olmia learns that the 5 completed verses of the Memoria della Stono can be used to call forth the gods. At the metalwork in Bastok, Cid reveals that Bahamut has been found, far away beyond the Sea of Clouds, and announces that he is working on an airship that could potentially reach him for a fight. Prish is spotted in Juno, and everyone sets off to find her. Prish surrenders herself to the Junoan authorities. Some of the characters conclude that Prish may actually be the Keeper of the Apocalypse, whom Moldarion intends to use to awaken the Twilight God using the power of the Memoria della Stono. Esha-Antal reveals herself to in fact be Moldarion, and explains to Prish that defeating the Keeper of the Apocalypse will only set the darkness free to reincarnate into another body, and that the only way to actually end the cycle is to resurrect Promathia and kill him from within the Mother Crystal. Olmia tracks down a member of the Tavnasian choir and manages to learn the 5th verse of Memoria della Stono. Borrowing Cid's new airship, the party gathers in an attempt to join up with the Junoan armada in the skies. Prish is found on board one of the airships, and they are set upon by Nagmalata and the Mammoths with biological weapons. In a bid to placate him, Prish reveals that a path to Altayu exists in Movilpolos, a city of goblins beneath Gustaberg. In turn, Nagmalata alarms Bahamut to the presence of the airship armada. Preesh reasons with Bahamut that the emptiness within her has been removed and contained in the Magicite. Bahamut reveals that Preesh is in fact no longer the keeper of the apocalypse, and that the true keeper instead lies in Altayu. Bahamut declares that if he destroys mankind, there will be nothing for Promathia to envelop, and he will not have the strength to enter Vana'diel physically. Bahamut then attacks the party on the airship, and Tenzin retaliates with a strike from his sword, charged with the power of Phoenix. Tenzin's attack unfortunately fails, but Bahamut is dealt a very critical blow. In stopping Bahamut's attack, Phoenix has unfortunately released all of her energy, sacrificing herself to save the adventurer and the others. Esha and Tarl meets with the party in Juneau to plan how they will gain entry to Altayu. At Movalpolos, the Moblins appear to be injured, and the party discovers that Celtius actually entered a path dug for him and then collapsed it behind him to ensure that he was not followed. Since they cannot follow here, the party must try to find a new way to enter Altayu. Sid mentions that there's a strange red light shooting up from the sea, and the party arrives at the red beam where Tenzin reveals that he has a new goal: to kill the adventurer. Acting on Phoenix's final instructions, he attacks us, but of course fails to kill us. The red light engulfs the airship, and the party is teleported to the 5th Mother Crystal in Altayu. Unlike the other 4 Mother Crystals, the one at Altayu is completely devoid of warmth. Celtius explains that Altayu and its Mother Crystals were actually sunk so deep into the sea that they were pulled into another dimension. As the Mother Crystal for Altayu sank, it has slowly been drained of its light. He has planned to gather the light from the other 4 to power this 5th Mother Crystal, and he chose the adventurer to carry that light as he couldn't do it himself. Nagmalata appears and attacks Preesh, seizing her amulet and using it to draw the light out of the adventurer. Arriving in Altayu, the adventurer hears a mysterious voice beckoning them to the Grand Palace of Huzoi. There, they resolve to find the Zilartian king, within the palace where the adventurer regains the light of the 4 other Mother Crystals. The party arrives at the Chamber of Eventide, where the Dawn Maidens slumber. Celtius explains that the collective emptiness extracted from the Kulu when they returned themselves to the Zilart had eventually coalesced and manifested to become the Twilight God Promathia, which the Dawn Maidens had managed to seal within a chamber in the castle. Wanting to discover the truth, Nagmalata breaks the Dawn Maiden's seal and frees Promathia, who swallows him whole immediately and absorbs the emptiness within him, allowing him to learn that the children of Vana'diel are all born from Promathia. Using this new power, he attempts to break free from Altayu and enter Vana'diel itself physically. Preesh and the adventurer are drawn down to the lowest level of the palace, where Celtius attempts to slow Promethea's advancement. Together they battle with the god of Twilight, and eventually they defeat him, utilizing the light of Altana, his polar opposite. Promathia is finally defeated and the life force returns to the Mother Crystal. It is revealed that the emptiness is in fact the embodiment of death itself, and even a god would die when faced with its power. Altana was in fact the one who split the original 1 Mother Crystal into the 5 separate Mother Crystals, in the process creating the 5 races of people who would contain the emptiness into smaller parts, and in the process creating Vana'diel. Okay, so that was like a lot, right? There are some additional story pieces of Final Fantasy XI, of course, but I think that these 3 storylines really do the majority of the heavy lifting as far as the really important lore of Final Fantasy XI. As for how these expansions might be adapted into 14 as a raid series, let's take a look at how I think that might work now. My number 1 theory is that the 3 wings of the 24-man raid series will essentially be entirely contained within these 3 storylines. I think that instead of some sort of segmentation where each wing is one expansion, they'll instead sort of bleed the stories all together to create one singular overarching story, similar to how the expansions in Final Fantasy XI sort of built the story out in layers. So my thought for this could go something like this. Somewhere in Tyrol we discover very large ruins buried beneath a deep layer of the unexplored jungle. Inside of the ruins we find a visage of 2 deities, a god wrapped in chains and a goddess with a brilliant halo behind her head. We find inscriptions labeling them as the Twilight God Promathia and the Dawn Goddess Altana. We also find a massive gate with a strange lattice-like webbing in front of it with a dull crystal at its center. Despite all efforts, this gate cannot be opened. We discover that somehow these statues and gates are constructed of cermet, a material that was utilized in Garlean war machines, but it appears ancient and totally weathered, unlike modern Surmit. Turalian historians admit that though they have seen and heard references to Promathia and Altana in oral and written histories of Tural, they had never actually seen depictions of them, and assumed that they were just some sort of ancient understanding of Hydaelyn and Zodiark. We discover that the ruins date back to a time between the Sundering and the Allagan Empire, somewhere around the Second Astral or Third Umbral era. Eorzean researchers, of course, flood to the New World, wanting fiercely to understand the effigies of Altana and Promathia, and they slave away at the ruins, wanting nothing more than to see what the world was like at the time of their construction. Their desires grow so fervent that they begin to resonate with the crystal at the center of the gate, sparking it to glow brightly, and for the lattice-like gate to seemingly dissolve into the crystal, where the gateway becomes a massive rift. Terrified by this new development, the researchers retreat to conduct more studies. Through their effort, we learn that the Surmit Gate is actually resonating with Dynamis, the energy discovered in Endwalker that has gone basically completely unused for some reason, and that the desires of the research resonated strongly enough with the crystal at its center to actually reactivate this gate. And in doing research, we learned that this Surmit Gate was once referred to as the Gate of the Gods, hence the statues of Altana and Promathia at its flank. Wanting to know more, the researchers implore the Warrior of Light and their companions to enter the rift and discover what's on the other side. When stepping through the rift, we enter Vana'diel, which it is revealed is not a separate world, but our own world, simply very long before the history we've ever been taught. From here we learn of the Beastmen leaders and their ultimate leader, the Shadow Lord, we thwart the plans of an ancient evil race known as the Zilart, and even face off against Promathia and Altana themselves. So yeah, that's pretty much my theory of how they might do this. It seems a little bit out there, but I really hope that they don't just do a Vana'diel is an alternate reality, or Vana'diel is one of the shards. It would just be a lot more fun if they incorporated Vana'diel into our own world, and made it actually count for something. What would be really awesome is if they did something where, as you progress through the raid storyline and helped the people of Vana'diel in the past, the ruins in our time would change slightly, eventually culminating in a statue of the Warrior of Light being there, labeled as the Warrior of the Crystal, who helped save Vana'diel from its darkest hours. So yeah, that's my recap of the main 3 expansions of Final Fantasy XI, and my theories for how they might connect to Final Fantasy XIV. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. Do you agree with my theory, or disagree? Tell me why. And if you'd like for me to cover the other story beats in Final Fantasy XI, leave a comment below letting me know, and I'll do my best to get it out within a reasonable time. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe for more info as we move closer to Dawntrail.